Well, the federal budget has offered a $3 billion lifeline to students who rely on HECS debt to get an education. It's just one of the measures Labor has introduced. We knew that last week. Universities will also be affected by one particular measure in last night's budget. That's around 1/3 of our total migration intake is the overseas university high fee paying students. Now the government is going to impose limits on those international students depending on how much student accommodation each uni can provide. Joining me now is Universities Australia CEO Luke Sheehy. Good to see you, Luke.
Thanks for having me.
I think this will be really popular among voters in places like Sydney and Melbourne because of the rental pressure. But can it be done practically? What are the problems that you're seeing with delivering that?
Well, I think the really important thing to remember is that international education is a great Australian success story and it's underpinned significant economic growth. And NAB tells us that a half of economic growth last year came from this tremendously important sector. And international students, we know, only contribute to 4% of the rental market. So in negotiating with the government on what they'd like to see as a co-investment for additional growth above what's agreed is what's in the paper. Universities will work with the government to see how we can provide accommodation for both Australian and international students. I think it's important that students have somewhere to live and that there's confidence in the Australian community that international students and domestic students have somewhere to live while they're studying. It's important.
Okay, so about 4% of the rental market they have an effect on. Do you think universities where this is going to matter, so in the major cities, actually have the space to provide more student accommodation, either, on properties that they own that's only available to students or on campus?
Well, universities have very different footprints. Some have tremendous amounts of land in regional areas and, of course, outer suburban areas, and some are very small campuses in CBD footprints. So it does vary depending on the campus. So I think it's important to remember that where we've succeeded in the past, universities have worked with the private sector, particularly with the previous National Rental Affordability Scheme, to turbocharge student accommodation. And I'd call that adjacent to many of the campuses in the inner cities. There is space limitation at some of our older universities that are in the main cities, but other universities do have land, and that might be realised through a negotiation with the Commonwealth.
It's a vague plan at the moment. The government hasn't put hard numbers on it, which I'm sure you'll be relieved about. They say after consultation. So do you think it will have to be, a kind of blanket plan for universities and then you carve it up between yourselves, or will the government need to almost negotiate with each university individually?
Well, we'll see where they land. And obviously, they've got to consult widely, and I think I'm up for fortnightly meetings from here on in for the next couple of months. Just fortnightly on this issue alone. But what I think is important is understanding that the system is diverse and there's lots of capacity differences within the university sector to deliver on this. And also some universities have more capacity for growth in international students. So there'll be individual assessment of each university. And there already is a compact that we have with each university has with the government for its funding arrangements. So what I anticipate is there'll be an extension of that to negotiate growth. We've actually seen that in the Accord and the budget papers to yesterday, that universities will move to manage growth for domestic students over the next couple of years. So I expect a new Tertiary Education Commission will end up negotiating with individual universities around the size of their both domestic and international student numbers over the years ahead.
So is this a surprise, or did you know this was coming? Were you consulted?
Look, obviously the government has a policy, and they've been quite clear about reducing the numbers of incoming migrants into the country to relieve some of those pressures, both perceived and real, in terms of housing and other things. I think we've been talking to the government for a while to get better clarity. The current arrangements around the way student visas are processed according to risk ratings of individual institutions is not fit for purpose, and we've made that very clear to the government. So what we're looking for in this new policy proposal is clarity, certainty and growth for this critically important sector for Australia.
All right, good luck with those fortnightly meetings.
Thanks.
Luke.